The floor 68 to 73K, the sailor level. On February 3rd, Bitcoin briefly dipped to 72,897, which put MicroStrategy's massive 713,000 plus Bitcoin position underwater because their average cost is 76,000 per Bitcoin roughly. The psychological support analysts at Finance Magnets and Daily Forex suggest that if the 74K level fails to hold as support, the next stop is a rapid slide to 68. The bear case 56K to 60K. If the current risk off sentiment persists due to geopolitical tensions and a stronger dollar, analysts from Galaxy Research and Coinpedia warn of a much deeper correction. Realized price. The realized price is around 56K. That's the average price at which old Bitcoin last moved, which historically acts as the ultimate bottom in a bear market. The 200-week moving average. This long-term safety net currently sits at about 58K. In past cycles, Bitcoin has almost always touched or briefly dipped below this line before a true recovery begins. The extreme bear case, 25K, God forbid. Some analysts, including those at Motley Fool, point out if this cycle mirrors the 2017 or 2021 crashes, a 70 to 80% drop from the peak is possible. This would mean a catastrophic fall to 25K. Though most current 2026 analysts view this as unlikely given the level of institutional exchange traded fund adoption, now providing somewhat of a buffer. Why it might stop dropping soon. There's a glimmer of hope as long-term holders have finally stopped selling after 2 years of profit taking. Additionally, the AHR 999 hoarding indicator, a tool which is used to find market bottoms, just fell below 0.45 for the first time in over 800 days, which is generally a signal that historically marks a generational buying opportunity. Current risk level, price target 73.6K. Well, we're sitting there currently, actually. High probability, we're currently testing it. Major correction, 63K if 70K fails. Cycle bottom, 56K. Possible historical max pain level. Now, what am I looking at personally? I've been saying like 60 to 70, right, all along. If you look at any of my videos, I mention that on a repeated basis that I was waiting for that test. See if I can drag this back. See that zone right there between 54,000 and 70K? That's what I've been waiting for to average down on some of my position, and that's where I think we're going. I don't think we go too far below that 200-week moving average. So if you bring up the weekly and then you bring up the 200-day, not day, but 200-week moving average, that is sitting in around 58K currently. Of course, it's changeable, but about 58K. So that's close to that 60 to 70 range I've been talking about all along. Let's go back to the daily chart. So you look at it, take moving averages off. You look at it, we're touching the top of that zone just above 72K that I've been talking about right there. We've already dipped and hit that, just about dropped to that point. It looks like we're just about there. So we dipped at the top of where I had alert set up, right there to the penny. Look at that shit, right there. I had that alert set up for weeks. So I drew out some lines, the white lines you see, because I'm looking at the chop now that existed previously. That's got to hold up. That price has got to hold up above that range, about 72,000. If it breaks into that zone, then it's probably going to chop and test in that zone between like 54K to 70K. It'll probably consolidate again if it doesn't outright break even worse. I don't see why it would break worse unless overall conditions in the market get even more untenable for the overall market. There is the Clarity Act, but the passage of that is kind of on the fence right now, and it's not going to be a timely thing. So you got to keep that in mind. So the only saving grace this year really for Bitcoin, well, there's a couple of actually if you think about it. One would be the Clarity Act, what comes out from that. Two, obviously, if you get tax cuts and you get a Fed rate reduction later in the year that injects liquidity into the system, then Bitcoin could actually have a promising year later on in the year. Other than that, I would say you got to wait till like just prior to the next halving in 2028 before you start entering another potential bull cycle, which personally, I think that's a guarantee that during every halving, just prior and after every halving, you're going to have a bull cycle making new highs for Bitcoin. So this is going to test those with the strongest resolve. It's going to hurt. It's going to bleed you money. You're going to be underwater, but you got to be able to buy the right underlying. And really, honestly, I know I'm talking about blocks and BTCI, but if we're in a bear market for any length of time, those two funds are going to get hammered even worse because they're paying out large distributions. And if Bitcoin's price action is slightly down to bearish or sideways for too long, they could really lose a lot of their net asset value over time. So, really, in my opinion, the best bet is if you don't want to buy Bitcoin to hodl it long term, directly, you could always just dollar cost average the exchange traded funds that holds, that are based on the spot price of Bitcoin, basically. Something like IBIT from BlackRock, which is the most liquid, the biggest fund out there, and has really great options. Actually, IBIT, let's look it up real quick. IBIT from BlackRock was one of the fastest growing exchange traded funds in the history of the market. And it's sitting at a massive discount from the levels I had marked out. It's below that now currently. So it's becoming almost juicy at this point to start getting in and dipping into IBIT. Now, do I think it could go lower? Yeah, I think it could chop down in that same range as would put you where Bitcoin would probably be in that range when we hit under 40 in here, somewhere $30 to $40 a share. If we get under 70K on Bitcoin, I think we're going to be in here real easily in that range. You see that 30 to 40 range. And that's where I would be aggressive. I'm already watching a coal leap option for IBIT. I'm looking at options on it. And what I mean to say is a long term expiration option going out maybe all the way through to the halving, basically. See if I can bring up the option table on this. So, what would that cost if you're going to go out all the way to the max expiration for a call option? We go out to June of 2028, that's post halving, and we go out with a call option, say at the money, about a 40 strike currently, and that would be about the last contract on that sold for 16.60. You got to multiply that by 100. That would be $1,660 to buy that coal leap option. Now, what happens if you're early? If you were going to buy today and you're early and it falls down by $400 or $500? Well, if you really believe by 2028 have an event that Bitcoin's going to go higher, then you would just average down your cost basis. That's how I'm going to play it basically. But I'm waiting for those levels on the chart that I mentioned for Bitcoin. That's what I'm waiting for before I buy a coal leap option because of the expense of that. It's almost $2,000 to leverage. So I want that ideal entry. I want to see if we hold up here, and if we don't hold up here, because it doesn't look like we're gonna, right? If you look at that chart, there's no indication that we're gonna hold up at this level. It looks like we're definitely going to dip down further into that sideways chop at a minimum. So before I ever enter a coal leap option on IBIT, I want to see if we hold up above this level, and if we don't, if we break down, I want to see where we're on this range here. And I'd be willing to go under the lower part, the middle part of this range, around 60,000 maybe is the middle, before I buy my first coal leap option on IBIT. And then what would happen if it goes down below that? Well, I'm looking at levels further down where I'm going to buy at previous support, maybe in the 30,000 range. I don't think we get there. Personally, I don't think we get further than about 60K, maybe roughly 58 to 200 week moving average for Bitcoin. probably 58,000. If that happens, that's where I load my first one or two contracts. And I'm going to average down my costs. If it goes down lower in this hold for the long term, maybe even sell poor man covered calls that gets the position. In addition to maybe buying shares of other stuff besides also for the dividends. All right, guys, be careful out there. That's just what I'm seeing for Bitcoin, what analysts are seeing for Bitcoin, and what I see on the chart for Bitcoin. Take care.